before I hit the ledge that Matt stood on, and I land flat on my back. And I don't know at the time, but I've broken my back on impact. And then I start to tumble, and I'm about to slip off that ledge, me to you, and fall another 90 foot. God. And it's as I'm on the edge of the ledge, and pretty much half of my body's already gone. And I was looking at my foot, and I was like, trying to do that innate process that you've done for 26 years that moves your foot. And I was like, dude, I can't do it. And that was really, that was a big moment of knowing that there was nothing I could do to actually even wiggle a toe.
Yeah.
And first and foremost, think in a year's time or in 5 years' time, where do you see yourself? So in that ideal scenario, think, who is that future version of Darren? What's he doing in a year or 5 years? How did he get there? You know, what actions did he take? Because he lived the same existence. He just had his heart broken as well. But how did he pull himself out? What actions did he take?
Welcome to the Proud Talk. I am your host, Tracy Hill, and today I am joined by the extraordinary, is that okay? Extraordinary.
I'll go with it.
Darren Edwards. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, honestly, I'm so excited. So, you in your bio, I had a quick look, and you class yourself as a disabled adventurer, motivational speaker, and resilience coach. And that's all great, but I think the thing that absolutely fascinates me is that you have kayaked from Land's End to John O'Groats, which is 1,400 kilometres, and that was last year.
Yeah.
And that you're going to be the world's first expedition leader, or you have been.
Have been.
But what are you doing this year? Because this year blew my mind when I found out about what you're up to.
So in a little under 2 months, we fly down to Antarctica. And I'm attempting is the big word here.
Yeah.
Because I think in life you have to be willing to potentially fail to kind of see where that limit is.
Yes.
So for me, what I'm about to undertake, 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents.
Did you hear that? 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents. This has never been done before, has it?
I'd be the first wheelchair user or person with a disability to complete what's called the World Marathon Challenge.
Okay.
So day 1, Antarctica, 26.2 miles on the snow and the ice. You get on a plane, you fly to Cape Town, same again next day, fly to Australia day 3, same again. And you eat, sleep, everything on the plane. And the only time you're on land is to do your marathons, get back on, and you go. And it was given to me as an opportunity by the guy that runs this kind of thing.
Okay.
And he was looking for somebody from an inclusivity and accessibility point of view to prove whether it could be done or not. He said, I'm curious. I'm curious if it can be done. And someone's given me your name and said that you might be the guy to give it a go. So my honest, logical answer was, hell yeah, let's go for it. And he was like, brilliant. And then said, just in terms of my planning, Darren, what is your current marathon time? What's your current PB? And I laughed and said, I don't know, I've never done one. And he thought that was a joke. So he laughed. And then it dawned on me, I was like, oh no, he thinks I'm joking. He thinks I'm a supreme achieved marathon runner. I've done lots, but I've never run in my wheelchair.
Yeah.
I've never run.
Yeah.
So to speak. And I was like, no, I'm so sorry. I've never done one. But I've got 6 months. I'll train. And I think the definition of a dream is something that you can't achieve tomorrow. In my head, anyway. Yeah. So I knew that 6 months' time was long enough to make it happen. If it was the next week, I still would have said yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So what's the training been like for you leading up to this?
So I live in Shropshire, which is fortunately incredibly hilly. So I've been getting out with my 2-year-old border collie who loves this, who kind of like, if he knew what was going on, he'd be like, because all of a sudden I'm like, right, let's get out for some long runs.
Yeah.
But it was building it up from even just doing a couple of miles quickly to 4 miles to 8 miles. And then a bit like training for a marathon that you've never done before. You don't run 26 miles day one and think, oh, I can't do it, which means I can't do it.
Yeah.
You build it up. And we've had to look at how we'll modify. So
I was going to say.
it won't look like this.
Yeah.
This is, every day pottering around London or whatever it might be. If you took this to Antarctica, I think you would probably get a foot off the plane and you would just be stuck.
I was going to, yeah.
So
you need the ice chains on there, everything.
There'll be ice pick, like on the tyres, they'll have little like ice knobs is the word.
Yeah.
Which will give more traction. There'll be thicker tyres. There'll be a wheel at the front, which kind of turns it into more of like a trike. Because you got to think, you're not just doing one marathon on the snow. That's just day one.
Yeah.
You've then got to be able to like last for 7 days when all you're using is shoulders, upper body. And we'll talk about it, I'm sure. But I'm, my injury when I had my climbing accident, so I'm paralysed from the chest down. So I've got nothing in terms of functional movement below my chest.
Yeah.
So this is all going to be
all upper body. And I think that's probably a perfect place to just pause and talk about where this sort of all started 6 years ago. So could you take us back to Darren 7 years ago? What was his life like?
So Darren of 7 years ago, so we'll say 2016, Darren of early 2016 knew exactly where he wanted to be.
Perfect.
Kind of new
was that?
trajectory. So I think life fell into probably 3 kind of aspects, 3 camps. The first was a genuine love and passion for mountaineering. Like it was the thing, any spare time, up the hills, on a cliff, up a mountain. And that was when I felt most me.
Yeah.
That authentic version of me and that pure happiness form was there.
Okay.
And everything was building up towards flying out to the Himalayas in 2018 to climb Mount Everest.
Oh, wow.
And obviously that takes planning, money, all of those things.
Yeah.
All of that hard work was being done. At the same time, I was going through selection and then training for the Special Forces Reserve.
Okay.
So the SAS has a reserve element and the selection process for that is horrific.
It is absolutely. I've got a friend who's the
Grim.
Yeah.
It's grim. But what they're looking for is grit, determination, heart, and resilience. They're not looking for the fittest bloke because, trust me, when we first started, we had 150 guys, and I was looking around. I was like, "Shit, I'm like the weediest looking guy here."
Yeah.
But that's not what they're looking for. That's not what counts. But anyway, so I'd worked for 2 years to achieve something very particular with that, and it was at the culmination of the training point that life then changed.
Yeah.
So in 2 regards, there were 2 dreams that were left unfulfilled. And I think I could have really used that as a negative kind of emotional response post-accident, but I didn't. And then in day-to-day life, I was just about to start my first official job as a history teacher.
Oh,
So I was 2 weeks from
I
starting.
love history. I'd have loved you doing my history teacher.
Yeah, it's the only subject I could teach. I couldn't teach any other subject
Yeah.
because I wouldn't care. Whereas history,
Amazing.
my bookshelf at home is just
Yeah.
a various assortment of historical books.
Brilliant.
So, but that's kind of where life was. So we
Okay.
had these 3 elements that were all building into this bigger picture of where I saw
Yeah.
me, kind of thing.
And that day, were you just going out on your weekend, or as you normally would for?
Yeah.
walk?
So, I
Climb.
climbed with a lot of people, a lot of different climbing partners, but the guy that it all started with was my best friend, Matt.
Yeah.
So embarrassing disclaimer. When I was 16, I was at college and I bumped into this guy called Matt, and he was like, "Have you ever climbed a mountain?" And I was like, "No." Like, at the time, I played football and I drank.
Yeah.
And I chased girls, all unsuccessfully, all those things. And he was like, right, you need to come round to mine. I've got this video that you'll love. It's this guy called Bear Grylls. And it was when he first started out. And I'm like 16, watching this guy in Iceland, you know, doing what he was doing, mad stuff. And something in me was like, that looks fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So the next weekend, me and Matt were packed into the back of his like second-hand first car, Renault Clio, you know, the sort of thing that would be lucky to make it an hour to Snowdon. And we climbed Snowdon and we wild camped. And in that moment, I was like, this is it. This is like what I've been missing. And you know what? I climbed one mountain and I came back and I was like, I feel like a better person. I feel like a stronger person.
Yeah.
And then that was that progression of climbing bigger and harder and learning more and more about how far I could push myself beyond these kind of like self-limiting beliefs of I'll never be able to do that. But anyway, so he was in the Navy. He was back for a couple of weeks and I was like, right, let's get out, let's go. So we went to a cliff face about half an hour from me called World's End. So it had like a bit of a foreboding kind of name. And it was known for being dangerous, but there was a particular route that I'd always wanted to climb. So with lead climbing, you've kind of obviously got your gear on your harness, you're climbing up and you're putting protective gear into the rock as you move, and then you clip your ropes through, and you're technically as safe as that top bit of equipment, as long as if you fall, it holds. And it's a 120-foot rock face broken up into 4 kind of chunks. And we are coming towards the end of the climb, the end of the day. You know, we're going to kind of get back. Matt's going out on a first date that night. So we're trying to wrap things up. And there was one bit left. And I led. Matt's below me belaying as I'm clipping in. And it's a really tough climb. And I think it was at the limit of what I was comfortable with. And as I was climbing, I was like, this is a bit sketchy. So some of the rocks I was trying to hold on to were almost coming off in my hand. So I'm trying to climb with minimal force on anything. But I get to the top, and it's only once I'm at the top, I set myself up to bring Matt up to me, and he tries 3-4 times and can't make it, that the easiest thing for us to do was for me to abseil back down to this little ledge that was no more than me to you in terms of its width. And then from there, we would walk off, take a long route back down to the car, and we'd be home. So I very quickly change around my kind of anchor point so I can abseil off it. And I take one last sort of look over my shoulder. So I've got that drop over my left shoulder. I look down and Matt's kind of looking up at me and I'm just saying something to him. For the life of me, I can't remember what I said. But as I looked, the chunk of rock that I was stood on that was probably the size of this seat broke off the face of the cliff and dropped by about a foot maybe. And then as it dropped, it tilted. And obviously I have stood on the edge of a rock face so many times that you get comfortable with the fact that this has been here for hundreds of thousands of years. It's not going to move.
Yeah.
But on that day, that one bit did. And before I know it, I've been thrown off the top of this mountain, and I froze because it was the last thing I expected to happen. And the thing I should have done was to hold on to the live end of the rope, and I probably would have had my fall cut short. But I froze, and I could just hear everything happening. I could hear the rope zipping through my hand, through the belay device, and I just froze. And before I know it, I'm tumbling down, and it's probably 3 to 4 seconds of fall time before I hit the ledge that Matt stood on, and I land flat on my back. And I don't know at the time, but I've broken my back on impact. And then I start to tumble, and I'm about to slip off that ledge, me to you, and fall another 90 foot. And it's as I'm on the edge of the ledge and pretty much half of my body's already gone, that Matt has reacted, seen it, sprinted and jumped on me. And he saves me from falling off that ledge. And I'm quite literally there.
Wow.
And in that moment, I don't think I realised the enormity of what had happened in a lot of regards. But what I did know is that my best friend had just saved my life.
Yeah.
And as I was falling, 4 seconds feels like a bloody long time when life hangs in the balance and you don't know what's going to happen. And in those 4 seconds, I have no control on what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And I thought of all the people that I was going to never see again. I had so much time to think about that.
Yeah.
And then Matt got to me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, he doesn't let me forget it. So, cheers, buddy. I'll buy you a drink again sometime soon.
So you were rescued then from that. What was that process like? Because it must have been quite a long process.
Long. So it was about 3 hours. So from the dust settling, and that kind of moment a couple of minutes later, where the natural thing is that you just lie there to start with, and you're like, "What the?"
Were you conscious?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'd broken my back. I didn't know it, but I'd collapsed a lung. I'd torn. I've got a scar that runs from kind of the middle of my forearm all the way up to here. And that was what I was feeling. So as I fell, I kind of fell through the rock. So I, in that moment, thought my only injury was that I'd broken my arm, or I'd lacerated my arm quite badly. And it was a couple of minutes later that I was like, right, time to stand up. That I tried to push off the floor, and the only bit of me that moved was here up.
Okay.
And then Matt instantly, I think, knew that in this scenario, you just do not move the guy.
Yeah.
So he was like, stay still. There was a couple of climbers up on a route to our left. They called Mountain Rescue. Mountain Rescue were there about 40 minutes later.
Every minute must have seemed like an hour.
Yeah, it was tough. And Matt was there kind of saying, mate, this might just be shock. There could be so many things this is, don't read into the fact. But I was looking at my body and I was looking at my foot, and I was like, trying to do that innate process that you've done for 26 years that moves your foot. And I was like, dude, I can't do it. And that was really, that was a big moment of knowing that there was nothing I could do to actually even wiggle a toe.
Yeah.
So, Mountain Rescue team turn up, they start stabilizing the situation, stabilizing me, put me onto a spinal board. The doctor who was there to see if he's the doctor, he's there to administer what he needs to administer. I remember him saying, Darren, on a score of 1 to 10, I need to know where you're sitting in terms of your pain. And I remember lying through my teeth because I was scared to be vulnerable in front of another man.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I knew what I was doing in my head.
Wow.
Because the honest answer was 10, if not double the score, it's 20. This is the worst pain in my life. And I remember lying there, shrugging my shoulders and kind of going a 7. Because man to man, I was scared of saying, I'm scared.
Yeah,
I'm in pain. I need help. But his face is here, he's right in front of me. And he laughed in my face and said, Darren, we've just rescued someone who broke a little finger who said 9. And with that, I think he was saying it's okay to let that wall down. So I answered honestly at that point, given morphine. But, I'm there for 3 hours. Coast Guard helicopter comes in, drops a winchman down. I think in that moment, I'm like, oh, thank God, this is the rescue. I'm leaving. And then I start seeing that helicopter fly off into the distance. And I'm grabbing the winchman in his high-vis jacket. And I'm like, what's going on? And he said, it needs to go away and refuel. It's going to be an hour. Oh. So I had another hour there. But that hour gave me the time to do the most important thing that I've done at any point in this journey. And that was to lie there and to think, whatever happens, whatever this turns out to be, because I didn't know that I'd broken my back. I didn't know that I'd paralyzed myself. I didn't know X, Y, and Z. So the way I phrased it was, whatever happens, don't let it beat you.
Yeah.
And it was a very simple promise to make. Yes, I was high on morphine, so maybe that's kind of where that was. But every single day that followed, if things got tough and I was at the very limit of my mental capacity to stay strong, I would remember, don't let it beat you.
Yeah.
And that became a mantra in tough times.
And it's one that we should all say to ourselves, I think, on a daily basis, for sure.
Yeah.
So you get to the hospital, and at what point do you find out the severity of your injuries?
The next morning.
Okay.
So everything's happening around me. I'm kind of stabilized in a spinal thing, head brace. So I can't really see much of the world. I see the doctors coming in and they're saying, like, we're going to take you for an MRI, for an X-ray, and the word that played over and over and over in my mind was significant, because they kept saying to me, this is a significant injury. And I'd be like, am I going to walk again? I was asking all of the questions that were the obvious, what has happened? Am I going to walk again? Am I going to wake up tomorrow and it's all good? And all they would say is, this is a significant injury, Darren. We can't say much more until we've seen the scans. And I saw the scans. I saw all of my family rushed. My mum said that this is a woman that had never broken a speed limit in her life. She said that she broke every speed limit going to get to the hospital.
Of course, you will for your kids.
I remember reaching out to her, like my arm reaching out and just saying, I'm so sorry. And then my girlfriend turned up, Matt turned up, everybody was there. I went off for the scans, and then I was told that I would need to go for immediate surgery. I wasn't really told why. And went to surgery, and I woke up the next morning after, I think it was like a 9-hour surgery, because as I'd landed, to be completely transparent, as I landed, I'd broken my back into two clean pieces.
Wow.
So with that went any chance of recovery, because the rule is, as long as you don't sever the spinal cord, there's always hope. And in my case, the force of the impact had obliterated that pretty much. And I come around the next morning, doctor stood at the end of my bed, surgeon stood at the end of my bed, and they just said it like it was. There was no sugarcoating. It was, I'm so sorry, but you've broken your back at T6, thoracic 6. It was a complete dislocation. We've had to, bolt metal to your spine to get it back into place. And this is significant. This is a life-changing thing. And the doctor's advice in that moment was to accept what's happened, come to terms with it over time, and to create a new life, and to not think about going back, to think about going forward. And I remember at the time lying in bed being like, that's savage, because I wanted sugarcoating. I wanted to be told, you know what, who knows? You could, in a year's time, be walking around thinking, bloody hell. I wanted to hear that, because I wanted that element of hope.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. And at the time that was hard. But then I realized that having an element of hope would have completely derailed the journey that I've been on, because I would have focused on all the wrong things. I would have been trying to get back to the guy I was.
Yeah.
If I bounce a ball across the room, it doesn't bounce back to me. It bounces away from me. So, yeah.
So you mentioned that obviously at this point then you need to go into recovery, right? So I'm assuming a lot of physio.
Yeah. So intensive care for a good old while. Then you move to a spinal ward, which starts with 6 weeks of what they call bed rest, which is what it says on the tin. 6 weeks of lying flat on your back. And it is just giving the body its chance to heal. But as the guy or the girl in the bed, with everything being done for you, you can't leave the bed, you have to lie on your back. You've got, attractive young women coming in and doing bits to your bladder and your bowel, and you kind of like, you're like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. In other circumstances, you're lovely kind of thing. And so that was weird, because that was like, in that moment, 99.99% of life was out of control. It wasn't mine to control anymore. I was told if my bed was moving. I was told if I was going to go to the toilet. I was told all of these things. And do you know what became the one thing? Or do you want to know the one thing?
I absolutely want to know. This is my next question.
Yeah. So you can easily focus on all the things that are uncontrollable. We all know that. That's obvious. And I had to find something I could control. And I knew that my mindset was always going to be mine. And no one could change that kind of like determination and stubbornness to overcome, and that promise I made myself on the cliff. So that was one element. But I needed something physical. I'm a physical person. I want to be running or climbing or doing something physically to improve my condition. So I've got a weak lung that needs to be rebuilt. And they come in one day with something called a spirometer. Have you ever seen a spirometer? They're given to people that have got, cardiovascular conditions where their lung capacity is really weak.
Just trying to think for asthma.
Yes,
you use
as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like
I have.
It's a little thing. It's got 3 ping pong balls in it in 3 chambers.
Yeah.
And the physio showed it to me. And she said, right, Darren, what you do is you put the thing in your mouth and you inhale and all 3 lift. So she did it, and she did it very nonchalantly. Inhaled and all 3 went straight to the top. And she gave it to me. And I was like, this is going to be, why are they giving this to me kind of thing. And that was ego. That was definitely ego. Because I was like, I'm this fit guy. I don't need to be sucking ping pong balls up. And she handed it to me and said, give it a go. And I gave it everything I had. And I couldn't even lift the first ball. And I was like, am I not doing this right? And I was like, I meant to be inhaling, not blowing. And she was like, yeah, you did the right thing. So I did it again. And the first ball just wobbled in its little chamber.
Wow.
And it really made me realise, like, oh God, I am actually quite affected here. So she gave it to me and said, right, practice, once a day and just stick with it. But I think she didn't quite understand how I work. So that thing became like, it was right on my bedside. And every couple of minutes, if I had nothing to do, which was all the time because I'm stuck in bed, I would pick it up and go like that. And day by day, I'd start to, wiggle that first ball. It would rise a little bit, second ball, third ball. And over time, I could do it.
Yeah.
And I've kept that.
Yeah.
And it's on my mantelpiece at home.
That's brilliant.
And if I ever think, if I have a bad day for whatever reason, because we all have bad days.
Absolutely.
My bad days aren't because I'm in a wheelchair, it's because of life, isn't it? The pressures of life sometimes. I look at that on my mantelpiece and I'm like, you've come a long way.
Yeah.
Be proud of that type of thing.
Definitely. So you're going then obviously through this huge pivotal change in your life. And I think you hit on a quite a significant point there, though, is that that 1% you did have control over is your mind, but also that no one is Darren. You are you. There isn't a Darren that exists. So what in your head? What were you thinking was sort of the next step for you?
The next step, good pun, was I do it all the time. I'm like, sometimes you just got to stand up and they're like,
fuck's sake.
It makes you realise how many like colloquialisms or phrases involve something that.
Well, you said you were walking here earlier, so I was just like,
I sometimes say best foot forward, and I'm like, there's an irony there. But for me, like, I knew that I was saying goodbye to some pretty big aspirations, but the accident didn't end the aspirational person. Exactly. It ended particular aspirations.
Yeah.
So for me, I knew that I work best when I have something to aim for, when there's something in the future that you're kind of striving to achieve. And by absolute fortune, I'm in bed for 6 weeks. And what happens to be in August in 2016, the Brazil Rio Paralympics.
Yeah.
So I've got pretty much 2 weeks of content that I've got all the time in the world to watch. And I'm lying in bed. I know that life's going to be different. I know that I'm never going to walk again. And I know that I need to find these new things.
Yeah.
And I watched 2 weeks of people that have got, no legs, no arms, blind, paraplegic, quadriplegic, doing incredible things at the top of their sport, at the top of their game. And the ones that really captured my imagination were everything where the guy or the girl got out of their chair, got into their kayak or got into their rowing boat or got into the pool and competed. And you couldn't tell the bloody difference between them and an Olympic athlete, minus speed maybe.
Yeah. And
I was like, that is it. So in that moment, 3 weeks after being told that I'd never walk again, and 3 weeks into what was a daunting journey, I was like, that is it. That is what I'm going to strive for. And that was quite literally it. So I'm in hospital for 5 months. The latter months of that, you start to do the physical stuff, wheelchair, all the skills that you need, even lifting yourself, from here to here, off the floor to the chair. You're so weak that to start with, I couldn't even jump from here to here by using my arms. Yeah. Not jump, but you know what I mean. So you build that up slowly. And I asked for a day away from hospital. I'd been in for 4 months. And I was like, guys, I just need a day of normality. And they gave it to me. And me, Matt, and another of my really good friends called Harry drove up to Manchester, about 2 hours away, and we went to Manchester Canoe and Kayak store.
Okay.
And we walked in, and in front of us, like, this myriad of different looking kayaks. And the guy who worked there came up. He saw I had a hospital wristband on. He went, "Everything okay?" I was like, "Oh yeah, ignore that," kind of thing. And I was like, "We're here to buy 2 kayaks." So we looked around, we found these 2 matching sea kayaks. I bought one, Matt bought one, all the bits to go with it. And I'd never kayaked in my life. But in my head, which I was proved to be right about, the kayak was the ticket to being the same person in a different way. You know, adventurous, challenge-oriented. So I could go on adventures with Matt, side by side, me and him, just like old times.
Yeah.
And go off and explore a lake or a river or whatever it would be. And it would also be the vehicle to start my Paralympic aspiration as well.
Yeah.
So I go back to hospital. The next day I'm in physio, and Kate says to me, "You know, what did you do with your day off? Cinema?" Or, you know, she was thinking that. And I just got my phone out the back of my chair, and I loaded up a picture of me and Matt sort of sat and stood next to the kayaks that we took really proudly, and showed it to her. And she looked at it and was like, "Please tell me that's not yours." And I was like, you know. So it was a completely stupid purchase. Like, really, everybody thought I was daft, apart from like Matt, maybe. No, he didn't think I was daft, but everybody else did, because I was making a pretty big statement when I was completely unqualified to make it. And just like, you know, with Kayak for Heroes, with the Land's End to John O'Groats expedition, when 5 guys that had life-changing injuries announced to the world, "We're going to do something that's not been done before," 90% of people were like, "It's never going to work."
Yeah.
And that was kind of the reaction I got then. I had this small cohort of 10% that were like, "Great idea, Darren, well done." And then I had 90% that were quite, "This is a risk. This is not for you," kind of thing.
I suppose they're probably looking at it from a perspective as well as, you like extreme sports and this has happened, now you're about to go and do sort of another one. Like,
yeah, God knows.
Stop putting us through this.
Yeah, my mum was probably like, but yeah, it's probably what the case is. I think society is risk averse.
Very much so.
And if you're a physio that has taken someone from the very darkest moments of their life, and you've literally seen them so weak. I lost 20 kilos in weight. Wow. And I saw all of the muscle that I was proud of disappear. I saw my arms, you know, I was always stronger on my legs, and I watched that dissipate.
Yeah.
I watched my physical body change. And I was so weak that I couldn't lift myself an inch off the floor to start with. So I think from a physio point of view, you take someone from their most vulnerable point in their life, and you're in that profession because you're a caring bloody person.
Yeah.
And you want to get them through safely to whatever life is going to look like. But I think in some cases, the life-changing injury doesn't change the mindset. It does for some people, but it didn't for me. It just, I think, made me more adamant to, yeah. But we spoke before we started this about, like, I think who I was, being that determined, gritty, resilient person before, got me so far. I think it genuinely got me maybe 3 weeks. It bought me 3 weeks. And then when I was on bed rest, I needed another lesson to get me further. And that other lesson was perspective, you know, being aware that things could have been very different, being surrounded by people that had had neck injuries that couldn't move their arms. And I'm suddenly like, wow.
I've got these 2 great arms.
Yeah, and you realise how critical that is. And I knew that if Matt was half a second late, I'd have been gone.
Yeah.
And you know, when I was at the top of that climb, before I started to abseil, my helmet wasn't even on. How the hell did I manage to fall down a rock face and not hit my head once when I've got a scar that ends here, so close to my head? And someone showed me, one of my friends, I'm not on Twitter, but someone tweeted the day of my accident a picture of what the hell was going on. And they tagged at Mountain Rescue, North Wales. And he came in 3 weeks later and was like, "Dude, I didn't want to show you this earlier, but..." And in that picture, you see these tiny red dots that are the Mountain Rescue team on this cliff face. And then you just see this huge chasm below me. And I was like... So perspective and looking at my life through a different lens bought me more time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And what was your support around you like when you were out of hospital?
Brilliant.
Good.
Yeah, I'm incredibly lucky that I have supportive friends that are like me. You know, and they knew who I was. They knew that I wouldn't be content living a less fulfilling life or living a life that was less the core elements that I needed it to be truly me, to be truly happy. And I had a friendship group around me that would facilitate that. And even if they couldn't do it physically with me, they would find me the person, bring me the person. So a day after my discharge, so I'm discharged on the 23rd of December, on the 24th of December, they'd hired the local swimming pool for 2 hours and they cleared it with the managers that we were going to bring these 2 kayaks in.
Wow.
So a day after my discharge, 5 months later, the next day I'm in a pool and my mates have sorted it and all my family are there and all my friends' families are there to watch like the maiden voyage of this new chapter. And I sucked. I fell in like every 2 seconds. But it was the most fun, most adventure I'd had in a long time. And that was just the start of, you know, having these opportunities to then progress to a canal, to a river, to a lake.
Literally, you're like superhuman.
No, but
like,
I think the support, I think it's such an important question because support networks are such a vital thing when it comes to how you evolve your personal story. My story would be very different if I didn't have those people. I think I'd have still adamantly, stubbornly found my way, but it would have been harder work and maybe wouldn't be where I am today. I'd still be trying to get there kind of thing. But yeah.
And when this happened, you were in a relationship at the time and that changed, didn't it?
And that was the hardest bit. So, you know, I'm 4 months in to rehab and to everybody that would listen, I was saying, this girl, you know, when I'm out of here, the first thing I'm doing is proposing. Yeah. Because until that point, she'd been with me, you know, if not every day, but a lot of the way kind of thing. And I didn't appreciate it at the time because I was desperate to not see it, but I was seeing less and less of her. And I was hearing more and more, I'm so sorry, works. She was a doctor. Okay. So she was, you know, works. I've just done a 12-hour shift and I can't drive the half an hour to you. I just need to go home. I'm so tired. And me being desperate to hold on to that person was like, no, don't worry. Do it. Do what you need to do. I'm okay. I was desperate to see her, but I was trying to be there. I wasn't trying to be a burden because I already psychologically was like, am I a burden? I was asking the questions of myself in a relationship sense. And then one day she came in, she looked off and I was like, you're right. You know, you okay, love, type thing. And she just said, I can't do this anymore. Okay. And I remember being like, what's this? You know, so I think I'd been kidding myself that we were fine. And she just said, us, pointed to me, pointed back to herself. And then with that, she burst into tears, stood up and turned around and walked out through the hospital exit doors. And I never saw her again. And yeah, and with that kind of, you know, we're on a rug right now, that rug of positivity and resilience and grit and all of those things that had got me that far, I suddenly felt so vulnerable, so hurt, so heartbroken. And I was like, shit, if the person that I think is the one and the person that I think loves me most in the world can't be with me, then what does that say about my situation? Am I kidding myself that this is all going to be fine? Am I being naive? So it opened up a can of worms for internal conflicts in terms of, is my life not going to be what I think it's going to be? Am I delusional right now that everything's going to be rosy and I can still be me and we can still be us as a couple? And, you know, I was desperately trying to call her, didn't get anywhere. And it became very quickly apparent that that was it. So I would like try and sneak off to the toilets before I broke down in tears. I tried to like hide it from everybody, but you can't lie to people that you're surrounded by 24/7. And it was the most heartbreaking moment of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And for the first time in 4 months, I didn't know how I was going to get myself out. I quite literally was like, I'm out of tricks.
Yeah.
I've got nothing left this is the wreckage. And I don't think I can pull myself out of it in time. So I teetered on the edge there.
Yeah.
That's the first time in my life that I've been in a position where I wasn't sure how I could get myself out, which was weird. Yeah.
I think anyone in that situation would have felt exactly the same, if not worse, but you did get yourself out of it.
Yeah.
And what was that process like for you?
You know, when people say, time's a healer, and at the time you want to punch them in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're like, that doesn't help. Or people would give you logic that was completely
But logic and emotions are
two separate things. Because the logic is, Darren, every day will get better. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but that doesn't help me right now, type thing. And people would pity me, and people would, the day that I was meant to be discharged, I didn't, because we lived together and she was in the house, and I then didn't have anywhere to be discharged to. So there was huge uncertainty. Everyone tried to rally together, and the day that I was meant to be released, my family came in and brought a cake in, and they were like, screw it, we're going to celebrate that you would have been out today. And I remember almost wanting to throw the cake on the floor and being like, leave me alone, type thing. But had that not happened, I wouldn't have learned the single most important lesson that I have in my entire life, and that was from Kate, my physio. And she came in, I'd been skipping physio, skipping therapy, skipping everything. I was just like, I want to be on my own, leave me alone. And it was because I couldn't guarantee I wasn't going to cry in 2 minutes' time. I didn't want people to see it. So she came into my bed space, pulled that blue curtain round, and was like, right, listen, I know that me saying to you, be positive, doesn't get us anywhere, because it's not a switch. So I want you to take a longer look at your life, and I want you to relegate your emotions as much as possible to the back. And first and foremost, think, in a year's time or in 5 years' time, where do you see yourself? So in that ideal scenario, think, who is that future version of Darren? What's he doing in a year or 5 years? How did he get there? What actions did he take? Because he lived the same existence. He just had his heart broken as well. But how did he pull himself out? What actions did he take? Because she said, right now, you're being ruled by your emotions, which is understandable. But your emotions are dictating your actions, and your actions are dictating who you're going to be. And at the moment, this is for your own detriment. That was it was quite harsh to hear it. And I knew it. I knew that really throwing my toys out of the pram was only really pulling me back. And that in a year's time, I would be a different person to if I did what Kate said. So she left. She put that blue curtain back around, said goodbye. And I was like, you know what? Who am I? Who am I aspiring to be in a year or in 5 years? So I took that longer form look at my life and started to kind of like act in that way. It wasn't easy, but I kind of almost forced myself to act like this future version that I'm now chasing. And relegating your emotions to last place isn't easy. But having a sense of purpose and having a sense of drive and having a sense of aspiration helps. Yeah. Because it does help you to slowly turn the volume down on those internal emotions. But bloody hell, it took a long time. Breakups are never easy, are they?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah. But if you know what your purpose is, you know what you're trying to chase.
And that's it. Yeah.
You've got a reason for being beyond, I'm anxious, I'm distraught, I'm all of those things. But it took me, a long time to even entertain the thought of trusting someone again. So even though I'm a year down the line or 2 years down the line and life is great, still there's that element of,
yeah, of course.
I'm going to keep you at arm's length because I don't know if I can trust you with everything. And that is just, I think, a natural part of anybody that's had their heart broken.
It is, indeed. It really is. So how long did it take you to get into that kayak and really start training
Straight away.
Okay.
Straight away. But so when was it? So discharged in December.
Yeah.
In February, British Canoeing ran a talent ID day for like people that were like, you know, you're aiming for Tokyo. Have you got what it takes? So I turned up. We did the basic testing. I got invited back. So the basic testing was all gym stuff. And then I got invited back for actual, like, let's get you on the water and let's see what you can do. Let's see if you can, you know, and I told them, like, I'm a kayaker. I've been kayaking on rivers and lakes and over canals and rivers by that point. So I then turn up, they put me in this sprint kayak, which is long, thin. It's designed to go fast.
Yeah.
And it's not designed to be stable. So I get in it, I'm in Nottingham, it's freezing, February, and I'm at the side, you know, with my paddle on the concrete, and I'm sat in my boat, and the guy who's there to assess me is like, right, you know, off you go when you're ready. And I'm like, cool. And I push off, and I'm instantly like on a wobble board, and I'm like, oh my God, this is very different to what I'm used to. And within a matter of, I would say 2 seconds maximum, I fall in. And it's that cold, like February water. And I would say I swam to the side, but I literally could put my arm out and like grab the side. So I did that, pulled myself in, pulled the kayak in. And Steve went, right, well, if you go and get a warm shower, get your dry kit on, and we'll chat upstairs. And I knew that was him kind of calling an end on it and saying, thanks, but no thanks. And I was like, no, I'm going to get back in. So he helps me get out of the water. He empties the water out of the kayak, puts it the right way back up. I get back in, push off again. I get probably, 6 foot from the side. I fall in again, swim back to the side with the kayak, give it to him. He's like, shower? And I was like, no, we're going to go again. So over the course of the day, I think I probably set a GB record for like most capsizes by somebody that, is there to trial. And I went and had that hot shower once I was satisfied that I'd given it everything.
Yeah.
And we met in the office, and he went, bloody hell, what I can't criticize is your determination and your kind of grit and stubbornness. He said, I didn't see natural talent, but I wasn't looking for natural talent.
Yeah.
So then I get invited back some more and some more and some more. And then all of a sudden, my existence is driving over to Nottingham from Shrewsbury 3 days a week, training with the team there, training full-time at home, doing a part-time job in the civil service to like actually pay money, because I was trying to save up to buy somewhere. I'm living with my nan at this point, which is the only place I could get discharged to. So I had this beautiful relationship with my nan that took on a whole nother level because she was just nan before, whereas she became a friend. And then I'm, aiming towards Tokyo. So everything is moving in that trajectory in a really healthy, purpose-driven existence that had given me a reason to relegate any negative emotion to way, way in the back. Turn the volume down on the kind of small stuff.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, your mental resilience is pretty strong.
Yeah.
And it might be the time to bring it in, but there's been a couple of curveballs, obviously, that have happened on your journey. And one being your father. How did he feel with regards to everything that had happened to you, I suppose, first? And
I think
because it must have had some pressure.
Yeah, it was a tough time for my family. Mum and dad were separating. They were in the process of separating kind of before this happened, but almost at the same time.
Oh, and that's obvious.
So it was a big life change for both of them. This happened. I remember my dad coming up to me when I was in intensive care. I'm kind of like in that morphine-induced like blurry-eyedness. And he came up to me and like just held my arm softly for him. Because he was like a physical labour guy. He was a strong guy. Yeah. And like leant in and went, I always told you rock climbing was dangerous. And I was like, Dad, I don't need to hear that right now. My mum was like, Raymond, stop it. But he was quite pragmatic about things, quite logical about things. And you know what? He became like, I would get my handbike out of the garage. I mean, him would cycle around Shrewsbury and stuff. But he, what we were alluding to is he really struggled with his mental health. A lot had happened in his life, a lot of change. I was part of that change, and he struggled. And bit by bit, month by month, week by week, I lost my dad. And what was left was someone who was struggling with depression, struggling with mental health, which had never been like him. Okay. He'd always been this strong guy that I'd kind of, admired in, as you admire your father. And he just lost himself and he couldn't get himself out. And, I'm going around giving talks about resilience and mental toughness, and I'm trying to get through to my dad. But it was the first time in my life that I learned that mental health is not a simple fix.
No.
That it extends far beyond, here's a 45-minute talk.
Yeah.
Put your life in perspective, you'll be fine, type thing. And his journey ended last year, when he couldn't see a way out.
Yeah. Okay.
He couldn't see past, how do I get through this? And he would say that. And one night I go round to pick up my dog, Murphy. Dad's been looking after for the day. And he puts Murphy in my car and he goes to turn back and go inside. And me and him had never been like the I love you types. I loved my dad, but we didn't tell each other that. I told my mum told me. Me and Dad was a classic male relationship, I think. Unspoken love.
Yeah. And
something told me that night to tell him. I knew that he'd been struggling. We'd known for a year, 2 years. And I wound down my passenger side window and I was like, oi! And he turned around and I was like, I love you. And he turned around to me and was like, I love you too, son. And that was the last time I saw Dad or spoke to Dad. So we talk about perspective earlier on. And I had my heart broken again, losing Dad. But I was so lucky that the last thing that I said to him was something that he needed to hear. If that was the last thing he heard from someone, at least it was that. Yeah. And we hadn't left it on some argument or some tone. But it was really tough. And I think, people assume that I've struggled with my mental health. And I've been really lucky that I've never tipped into that. I've never. I know happily, I'd be lying if I said I had. If I ever pretend that I've struggled with mental health, I'm lying. And I don't want to do that. But seeing it in one of your closest people and not being able to control it was tough.
Like you say, especially when, it's your, I suppose it's your purpose in a way to talk about resilience and, mental strength. And it's got to be really, really, really tough not to be able to help those nearest and dearest to you. Yeah. But he must have seen some of your amazing successes, though, as well.
Yeah,
which is brilliant.
he would have done.
Still watching.
Yeah, he did, and we, it was going back to what Kate said in terms of that, in a year's time, and when Dad happened, and it was in the days afterwards, or not even the days afterwards, the day it happened, the afternoon it happened that I got that phone call, my mind instantly went to, right, let's put this reframe where you see yourself in a year now, Darren, because something's changed here. And I kind of thought, you know what, if I can do something to help another version of Dad, another version of me somewhere in the world, and stop it from getting to that point, then I've done something. I've controlled something here, that need for control again. So I called up another set of friends. I've got friends that will always say yes to funny ideas. And I told them what had happened, cut roughly. I didn't say that it was as soon as it had been. And I was like, I want to do something, and let's raise money for a suicide prevention charity. Let's raise money for a mental health charity. And let's do it by doing something that we're good at.
Yeah.
And the idea came to me when I was rowing one morning on the River Severn, and I was rowing past Shrewsbury School's boathouse where Dad worked. And most Tuesday mornings I would hear him shout from the balcony, and it would always be something along the lines of, "Oi, row faster," or some dad comment.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "Cheers," kind of thing. And I rowed past it this Tuesday, that Tuesday, September Tuesday, and I didn't hear anything. I didn't see him. And something in that moment was like, it needs to be rowing related because we've got a connection there.
Cool.
So long story short, called up my friends and I was like, fancy rowing across the English Channel and we'll do it for charity. And we made it happen.
Wow.
And that was for Dad and it was for other versions of Dad.
Yeah.
And it was also, I guess, for me, because I needed to feel like I'd done something. I couldn't turn back time, but you can, affect the future of someone else.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Of many, I think.
Hopefully.
Many.
And we raised quite a lot of money with that. So I'm very proud and I hope Dad's proud. I'm sure he is.
110%. So in 4 weeks you go to Antarctica, is it 4 weeks?
Yeah, 4 weeks.
4 weeks. How do you feel?
Nervous.
Okay.
But I think, like you read a book on adversity or you read a book on like people that are at the top of their game, they've risked failure more than most. And with Kite for Heroes, Lands and John O'Groats, with rowing the Channel, with trying to get to the Paralympics, with 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents, all of them have shared a common trait, which is that success is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough that in most regards, I've succeeded and proved to myself.
You really have.
Yeah. So, but with this one, this is a completely new thing for me. No guarantee of success. Scares the hell out of me. I'm starting to have like Antarctica themed dreams where I'm like stuck in the snow and I'm like, and I wake up and I'm like, oh, thank God. But if I don't try, I'll never know.
That's exactly right.
So,
and will you have support there with you? Or is it really sort of go out on your own?
So,
bye, Darren.
From what I've been told, 200 people have done it ever. And this year, because you share like a logistical element of a plane, there are 30 people doing it. So I'll be the only person that's, disabled kind of thing. So it'll be 29 able-bodied people that are, from what I've heard, all like Ironman, ultramarathon runners. And some of them are there to win it. They're going to set the quickest time on each one and to win it overall. I'm literally there just to be like, whoop, whoop, to kind of represent for me and for disabled community. I'm not there to bloody try and win. Yeah, I'm there to get through. But the guy that runs this race called Richard Donovan, I said to him, I was like, I could really do with someone just to help me with some of the stuff. Because for me, there are so many, risks of frostbite, pressure sores, all the weird and wonderful things that I'm more perhaps susceptible to. So he said, "Yeah, okay, we've got a spare seat on the plane, so you've got a +1."
Oh, thanks.
So one of the guys who was part of the Kite for Heroes team called Carl, who is one of my closest friends, is going to come, and he's like, he's calling himself bag handler, but in reality, he's going to help me make it possible, kind of thing.
And what's his fitness like?
Oh, he's
okay, good.
Way beyond me.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
But he won't be doing the marathons.
Right. Oh, okay.
He'll just be logistically like on and off the plane.
Okay.
And kind of like being the sort of the pom cheerleader.
Oh, you're going to have to send me all the links so we can put them in the bio for sure. I suppose I've got 2 questions. First, when are you writing your book?
I've actually just finished.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I never knew that. We've not had this discussion.
No, I finished it the other day. And it kind of takes it from the guy going through selection, the guy trying to climb mountains, accident, and then all of the wonderful things that have happened since.
I can't wait.
Yeah, and it's called Strength Through Adversity, which were the 3 words that a friend of mine said to me when I was in hospital. And I was like, bloody right, I love that.
Yeah.
So I kind of took that as like a little motto, strength through adversity. And I thought the book couldn't be called anything else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. You are
Amazing.
the first person that I've actually told beyond my family. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me. I asked the right question purely because I would love to read the book. And I've got 3 questions. So the second one is, there are people that go through a lot in life, different curveballs and different challenges. If there was one thing that you could say to them or to experiencing anything like you've maybe experienced, what would that be?
What I realised in my own journey and in others is how often people lose perspective on their lives. That 99% of the population fail to stop, take a step back, and to look at what they've got in their life. So for me, why on earth did it take me having 4 seconds of holy shit, I'm going to lose all of this, and in those 4 seconds have enough time to think about my relationship, my mum, my dad, all of my friends, and to think, God, I'm never going to see these people again. And then I got to do it, and it made me realise how much I'd taken life for granted. And you know what? I had one person come in to see me in hospital, and she came in and said, Darren, I'm really sorry if I'm a bit off today, but I've got a bad back. I laughed thinking it was like the best joke to say on the spinal ward ever. And she was like, what are you laughing at? And she was deadly serious.
God.
So there you've got such a massive example of someone who's walked into a spinal ward full of people that are never going to walk again. And her perspective is so blinded to that. She should have walked in and thought, bloody hell, how can I complain about my back type thing? But I talk to so many people that they get caught up in stuff that doesn't really bloody matter. And they fail to stop and think, God, I'm so lucky to have. And even when you're going through a really tough time, even if your heart is broken, you don't know what your future is going to look like. In that moment, it is tempting to focus on all the negatives, isn't it? And I think we're wired to look at the negatives, but we're not wired to stop and to take a wider look at life through a different lens.
Definitely.
And to think about all of the bloody good things that you should be grateful for.
Yeah.
When the Russia-Ukraine thing kicked off, I ended up going out with a few guys to the Romanian border of Ukraine, and just to help out a little bit. And you've got all of these kids, all these families just rushing across the border. And then a week later, I was in a primary school and I was doing a talk. And in my head, I was like, I've just seen the exact versions of you in another country. I didn't say it to the kids. But even that sort of perspective shift of how fortunate we are to have a bloody school here and we're not running away from danger. So sometimes you need things put in your face. But also sometimes people can have it put in their face and still fail to see it.
My last question. What are you most proud of professionally and personally in your life so far?
Professionally, was the first time someone came up to me after a talk and said what they were going through in their life. And this was after Dad. And a guy came up to me and was like, dude, can I have a chat? And I was like, yeah. So we went to one side and he said, I've gone through a really tough time. Relationships broken up. I've lost my home, all of that. A lot of stuff that I could relate to with him, really. And he said, last night I thought about ending it all. And then I came in thinking, I've got to sit and listen to this lad for 45 minutes. And he said that your story made me realise how fortunate I am and I've got so much to live for. And he said, I just want to say thank you. And I burst into tears in front of this random guy that I'd never met before, because it was what I wanted to achieve with Dad.
Of course, and that's what it's about, right?
So
exactly.
If I never made a penny from speaking and I never get through to anyone ever again, that was worth it. Personally was actually learning to trust again in a relationship sense, learning to be vulnerable, learning to say I'm willing to put my heart on the line again, because for 2 years I just pushed everything away. Any chance of romantic happiness was like arm's length pushed away, or I self-sabotaged, or I did something on purpose that I knew would end things, because I was not ready to do that. So in a personal sense, actually opening myself back up to the world and saying, look, I'm here to give it everything again was huge. Was really huge.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking today.
Pleasure.
You are super inspirational. I think anyone, the Benny the cameraman's even just like mind blown. Thank you for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe. Lots of love. Hey, if you have enjoyed watching the Proud Talk just as much as I've enjoyed interviewing, do me a favour, hit subscribe, like, and share. Lots of love.